contact the people again at, okay.
Yep, please
Hopefully
do.
I've still got their information.
Please do. All right. So
Maybe get some information on the 2 replica steamers up in Pennsylvania too. It's not going to be that far of a drive.
where in Pennsylvania, John?
I can't
New
tell right
Freedom?
off the top of my head, but they're both down close to Harrisburg.
Oh, not New Freedom.
Yeah, no, New Freedom.
Actually,
Yeah.
Okay. Good. All right. So we have a few people to introduce this evening. Joel Moore is somebody that Bernie and I met out in Pennsylvania at the Columbia meet or lectures and live history. Joel does the V&T Railroad in HO scale, and he's going to be doing a presentation for us in the very near future. Say hello, Joel.
Hi, how you doing? Glad to meet you all.
great modeling too. He's a great modeler.
Yes, absolutely. His interiors and his lighting is spectacular as well. And we have Dennis Lentz from Pennsylvania. Dennis, you want to say a couple of things about yourself?
I live here in Pennsylvania. I moved here from Los Angeles. I'm interested in the Civil War and Civil War railroading and all of the other military history.
You'll see.
Whereabouts in Pennsylvania?
Lancaster.
Oh, okay. You're about just up the road from me.
Yeah.
Cool.
Dennis has been to my house here back in 2014 when we had an open house. And then we met him again when we had the meet at New Freedom at Gettysburg. He does some beautiful modeling of the artillery loads, which I'll show in the PowerPoint presentation in a little bit. And so he and excuse me, Don will double team here. Hello, John? Somebody had a question? No. Okay. So let's see. And where is, oh, there you are. So Don, welcome. Mark, it was a nice surprise I see that you had seeing him here.
Yes, it was. I didn't realize tonight was artillery night.
Yeah, so the connection with Don came through Mark when we were talking about artillery loads. Guys, this must have been a year ago when I first talked to Don, or half a year ago. And we put a little presentation together around artillery, and I'll show you a little bit of that in a second. But Don, do you want to tell the folks a little bit about yourself?
Well, hopefully I won't get too narcissistic about this. Basically, I started reenacting 26 years ago as an infantryman. I really wasn't very good at marching and didn't care for it very much. So me and another infantryman, we struck out and started an artillery group. And we've been, or at least I've been at it for over 25 years now. In that time, I've had the great honor of being promoted to commander and the disappointment of being promoted to commander of an artillery battery, and then ultimately an artillery brigade, which in the Union Army basically means 2 or more batteries. I've had the pleasure of commanding up to 12 cannons in battle at one time and 156 men at one particular event. That was my high point. Down as few as at times only 1 cannon, which I feel basically naked with 1 cannon. I serve in several nonprofit corporations, and I have the honor of being the chairman of the board of one of them, Field Artillery Reenactors Association. I also, as with Mark, belong to a group called the Reenactors of the American Civil War, which is a larger group made up of infantry and cavalry and artillery and even civilians. We even let the ladies come along for the party. But in that time, I've also taken up the hobby of manufacturing Civil War carriages, full size. I've built 4 limbers, 3 cannon carriages, and 1 traveling forge. And when I retired from one of my many jobs I've had in my life, I went off to wheelwright school and became a trained wheelwright in making and repairing wooden wagon wheels. I've actually made carriage wheels for cannons. That's so much for the narcissistic, other than I've actually commanded 430 Civil War battles in the artillery role. So I'm kind of a veteran as such.
I'll say. God, well, it's great to have you. Great to have you. So I'm going to do a share screen now, and I'll turn it over to Don and Dennis. And you know, the format's always the same. If you have a question, just speak up, and we can play this very organically. Oh, that came out a little foggy, but this is Don in the center here, I believe. And how long ago was this, Don?
That's about 4 or 5 years ago.
Got it. Oh, that's fairly recent then. Okay. All right. So when I was talking to Don, he helped me see a distinction between some aspects of artillery. So Don, I'm just gonna put up the slides, and I'll let you and Dennis speak to it as you wish.
Well, what you have by regulars, that would actually be what we could also be called foot artillery.
Oh,
Most of the artillery was not fully mounted, in that the artillerymen walked along with the cannons. It usually made over 10 miles a day, a long travel for an artillery group. Also, each day at the end of the day, they had to remove all the wheels and grease all the wheels. And there are no things like jacks or anything. This is all done by hand labor. And you figure a small cannon weighs over a ton. So they were exhausted at the end of each day. Your light or cavalry artillery, in that group, every artilleryman had a horse to ride. So they could move a lot faster and they could keep up with a cavalry unit.
got it.
Oh, I'm seeing somebody's right mouse click window here.
Right
Over
mouse.
slides.
Maybe
Yeah.
that's me. That could be me.
I think it is.
Yeah, there's a menu on the screen.
Yeah, okay.
A
Yeah.
menu?
Yes,
Yeah, next, previous, so on and so forth, drop down.
Really? There's a menu on the screen?
yes.
Huh. Let me stop this for.
It's the menu for your PowerPoint where it leads
Why
up
is
to and
middle
gives you what you
gray?
can do with on it.
Let me try this again. Move this down. Is that better?
Yes,
Yeah, there's no menu.
Good.
Well, what
So-
you've outlined there is the basic positions. Every position on an artillery piece was done by number. So you're number 1, you're number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And the gunner, which is normally could be on horseback even, or he could be aiming the gun. A lot of times the corporal would aim the gun, and the gunner or the sergeant would be on horseback commanding the group. The 2 guys are necessary. This is the limber back here at the back. They're necessary because they have to be setting fuses for each round. It's not a matter of just bringing a round up. You'd have to set the time fuse, because time fuse were very commonly used in the war. With each cannon, there was a caisson. The caisson was basically the limber, the part on the front, and the caisson itself, which was the 2 ammunition boxes. And these 3 ammunition boxes would carry the basic ammunition that they would be using in battle. For a 3-inch ordnance rifle, there would be 40 rounds in each box, and then the limber that pulled the cannon would have an additional 40 rounds. But those were normally kept as the reserve rounds. In addition, the caisson carried a pole underneath, an extra one if one broke, and then there was an extra wheel. They actually had a shovel, an extra handspike, a pick, and a axe were tools that were carried with each caisson. So each gun would have a caisson.
And are those tar buckets just for lubricating the wheels and the axles?
That was lubricating the wheels. In addition to that, they actually had a leather water bucket that they went along because water was needed to fill the sponge cover boxes that would actually be used for the horses too. The forge to the side, every battery, and normally in the Union Army, there were 6-gun batteries, but there were 4-gun batteries. Every battery would have a traveling forge, which is the part in the back, and it's a mobile blacksmith shop. In addition to that, there was over 500 pounds of iron, extra shoes, and parts that were carried with them. The box in front didn't carry ammunition, it carried tools. In addition to that, there was a battery wagon, and the battery wagon carried even more tools that were necessary for what were called artificers, which were basically the skilled craftsmen that traveled with every battery. And they would normally have 1 to as many as 3. There's a battery wagon shown, just appeared. That would carry extra parts, and actually they had parts for the cannon. Because if something broke in the field, they had to replace it in the field. If a wheel broke, they'd have to replace it. They would change it with the spares that they carried, but they could actually repair the wheel itself. And any of the metal parts, they would have to blacksmith out and repair in the field. Okay, there's some of your common tubes. Actually, by the end of the Civil War, the most common used tube in the Union Army was the 12-pound Napoleon. They also had a lot of 3-inch ordnance rifles and your 10-pound Parrott. The 6-pounder was an early in the war gun, and by probably 63 or no later than 64, they weren't used by any of the frontline batteries in the Union Army. The Confederacy was forced with whatever they could gather, whatever they could capture on the field. And so they would have a lot of what we call mixed gun batteries. The Union Army got away from that after Manassas because they discovered the logistic problem of trying to mix ammunition within batteries. It made resupply difficult. Just like early on, they would remove the cannons from the field, or they'd leave the cannons in the field and they'd send the caissons back for ammunition. But they found out the caissons could never find the gun crews again because they'd moved. So the plan after Manassas was they would pull the entire battery off the field when they had to resupply with ammunition. So they keep them all together as a unit.
You know, one of the things that I really focus on, it's one of my passions, is to, as authentically as possible, replicate whatever you put on the layout. And when I was looking at the units that were around the W&A at the time of the summer of '63, I was looking at and researching what were the artillery units and what were the guns that they had, because it's pretty cool that some of the records will tell you exactly what guns were in the artillery units. So the whole idea then is, as you do loads, or as I will do loads, it's not just going to be random cannons on flat cars. These will be cannons that most likely were transported from Virginia down to Georgia, or that would have been in the units in the Army of Tennessee. So artillery is just too cool. I love this stuff. Thanks, Don.
Yeah.
Anything you want to say about the cannon and the accoutrements?
No, other than I've tried to calculate some numbers for you because you guys got to be into weight. Basically, a 6-gun battery would be 100 horses plus, and there'd be 118 men that had to be brought. There would be 14 limbers. There would be 6 cannons, 6 caissons, a traveling forge, and a battery wagon. In addition to that, you'd have 3 freight wagons, and those would be pulled by mules. So you'd have at least 18 mules or more.
Right.
How much hay does that take?
Well, that's what a lot of the wagons took for the forage. On the back of a battery wagon, they had a small provision for forage, but the basically a lot of grain was used because it's more portable food. It's actually one of the things that the artillery had to do is they actually had to place guards on the wagons to keep the infantry from stealing the grain to eat, because they'd eat the grain that was the forage for the horses.
And what makes a howitzer instead of a cannon or a rifle or a gun?
Howitzer basically is a slow velocity gun that lobs the shell in. A gun is a high velocity that has a flatter trajectory. The Napoleon is commonly called a gun howitzer because it was the first of the larger guns that was a high velocity gun but fired a large projectile.
And was smoothbore, correct, Don?
Yeah, the Napoleons were, yes.
Yeah.
Did the Union use mountain howitzers, the little smaller howitzers?
Well, one of the sad parts about the American Civil War is Alexander in the South and Hunt in the North both did not like mountain howitzers. So always they didn't report any of the action used for them. So to document their action, you find it very difficult. The Eastern armies tended to not use them. They would have been very valuable in many battles, but they weren't used. Most of them were used in the protection of Washington by the Union Army. And they would be used in the Eastern battles, or Western battles, excuse me. But in the East, they weren't commonly used.
Good. So the way this was set up was this first section is like organization and getting into like the specifics of the artillery and the units, and then we move into possible ways of transporting. And I know this was one method used, but as we've probably talked in the past, and I was talking to Don about this, you can share more, and so can you, Dennis, the likelihood that they would have removed the tubes to transport these on rails. And if they did remove the tubes, you shared with me a story about how the men actually did that. So
the picture you have shows a tripod that would be used by siege artillery for your heavier tubes. Light artillery, and there was nothing light about it because the tubes weighed anywhere from 800 to 1,400 pounds. The men were taught in the School of Artillery to remove the tubes by themselves without any assistance. You basically would, 2 methods. One was you take the hand spike, insert it in the end of the barrel, and you take the prolong, the rope that went with every unit, and you would wrap it from the castable, which is at the back of the tube, around to the front, much like that rope shows in the sling. And then the men would take hand spikes on the rope in between, and they'd pick the tube up by themselves. The other method, which was commonly used, which is actually a better method, they dig a small hole in the front of the cannon, and they tip the cannon up, let the muzzle go down into the hole, then they'd remove the caps and pull the carriage back. Of course, they still were stuck with a tube they had to pick up, but that was the quick method to get the tube off.
That's wild. That's wild. Let's see what else we got here. Oh, yeah. I believe a lot of you've already seen this, right? This is from John Gibbons' manual. And just to give you an idea of some of the terminology, what I found was interesting was the train, they called it down here in the middle. Is that, and the train over here, does that ring a bell for you at all, Don?
Well, actually, in the Union Army, a train was called a group of wagons that moved artillery or ammunition. So it would be called a train that way. It could be confusing as railroad buffs. You obviously thinking they're meaning train, but they didn't always mean train. Most of the heavy artillery, I tried to research this for this meeting. Most of the heavy siege artillery was actually moved by barge down in the south to the south, or it was transported by horse transportation. They
Right.
used, instead of 6 horses, they used 8 horses to pull the siege artillery, though.
Right. And then here was General Gibbon's version of what it would take to transport artillery. So if you're thinking about, doing something like this, of course, I don't know anybody that could run a train this long, but it could be in a caravan format. But it was interesting to see how many cars were, and I think Bernie might have even shared something with us and talked about how much feed it would take to transport with a unit in order to feed the livestock. Hypothetical train made up, yep. Pulled approximately 10 cars, and also that pre-Civil War railroad trains of heavy tonnage consisted of 2 more sections, right? Hence a caravan, okay. Mounted on flats. It's interesting that now a 14-foot truck. John, anybody else? I mean, did we have 14-foot? I guess we did. 14-foot flat cars?
Yeah, there are a lot of 4-wheel flat cars. Problem is that very few photos survived of them, but they were pretty common in the South.
All right, so this was plausible. It's not like they were just making this up.
Yeah, plenty plausible. I've got a few photos of 4-wheel flat cars somewhere around here. If anybody's interested, I could dig them out.
Yeah,
the wheels on all those cannons, if you're scaling it, they're basically 56 to 57 inches high, the diameter of them.
Oh, okay, right. There's just another shot. And it's interesting how they've got these all mounted in here together. And might this be the pole or the limber just sticking straight up?
Yeah, they're calling that a tongue, but its actual proper name was pole.
Right. And they left it attached to the limber, looks like.
Yes, probably because if it gets detached, it's going to get lost. By leaving it attached, it's there. And
Right.
Also, a bad thing about a limber is if you take the pole off, they will like to flip upside down. It's a balancing point for them. Now, Mark probably hasn't seen us do that little trick, but with the pole off, they're very treacherous limbers. They'll turn upside down in a heartbeat.
Yeah, I don't remember ever seeing one go upside down on you, Don.
We hide with shame our mistakes.
Okay.
Removing the pole in the field is not a smart move.
Right. Got it. All right. Let's see. What else we got? Okay. Yeah, I think everybody's familiar with these slides. Slides. Is there anything you wanted to add, either Don or Dennis, with respect to how they transported the horses and mules?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
The only thing I mentioned to him is I've had the pleasure or displeasure a couple times serving with horse-drawn units. They're rare, but they still exist. And horses are not the most sociable animal. I don't know if you remember, Mark, when we first had the third with us in Fortuna, their horses got in a battle and one of them broke another one's leg, and we had to have the veterinarian come there and kill it.
I do remember that event.
They're not that sociable. So one of the things that they'd do is they'd have to have a pecking order, like I like this horse, I don't like that horse. And they would also hook them almost bridle to bridle to keep them from fighting. So being packed like that was probably something they got used to. They didn't like it, but they got used to it.
Got it. Yeah, you know, from a transport standpoint, the only thing I noticed here, and I love to know where this is taken with
City Point.
It is City Point. You see the rails there and the artillery all lined up. That could be an interesting scenic element. I've almost got that on my W&A here. And then here's, of course, is the classic Longstreet's troop disembarking at Chickamauga Station. And here, you know, they're not on flats, they're on platform cars. And then we have this interesting behemoth. So I thought if somebody was really into modeling a load, this would be one hell of an artillery. Is that a Rodman gun, I guess?
Yeah, that's probably a 16-inch. That was probably the largest that the Union Army used. And I haven't found it yet, but I have a picture, a drawing, not a picture, of those being transported through the city of Washington. And what they took is railroad trusses between two enormous limbers that they custom made and slung that, because that tube weighs 100,000 pounds. That's that tube.
And they got two, like, I guess, is that, yeah, it's two like 6, maybe 20-foot cars.
I was going to say 18. Yeah.
Yeah. I can't imagine how that weight is just not crushing the bolsters on those cars. Looks like they have it jacked up here, right?
Yes.
Huh.
Probably
No,
because if
that
it
cannon
sits
be
there any
for
length of time, it'll break.
What's that, Don?
Probably because if it sits there any length of time, it'll break. Because again, that's 100,000 pound tube.
I know. It's like, I wonder if they, yeah, crazy. I don't know the story for this one.
Where would you use that cannon?
Where
Siege
was
of
it?
Petersburg.
Yeah,
Probably
where would this
siege-
be? Where would it be used?
Probably siege artillery.
They actually used it guarding the Potomac River. It was
Yes.
never fired in anger during the whole war.
They would have guns like that at Fort Delaware, wouldn't they?
Yeah, we actually have one here in Jersey at Fort Hancock, just outside of Long Branch.
Well, they would fire a 600-pound shell 8,500 yards. And I can't imagine what would happen to most of the ships at that time if they got hit with a 600-pound shell.
Yeah, really. So when you move into more of the modeling options, this is a great painting by Brian Kammerer. And through his research and some poetic license, I love how he configured some of the platforms and how they would load and unload different material, whether it was the livestock or the artillery, the men. Again, it's a great reference point if you want to model something of that nature. But we have that one. And here we have Dennis with our very own Jerry Dowd. And this is a Caisson and Limber. Dennis, you want to speak to that?
Charlie Smithgall here in Pennsylvania here has the largest collection of original Civil War artillery in a nice thing. And he helped me do some research on how they actually moved the artillery over long distances. And in here, we tie the wheels together, make a 4-point post header. And here you would take the poles off. The poles are quite fragile. And in the reenactment group I had was in California, and we had 2 6-up horse teams. I saw the poles actually break a couple times when they just happened to fall on the thing. So
Was that at Fresno?
yes,
Because I was there. I was about 25 feet away from that when that accident happened. One of
Ah,
the guys almost got impaled, if you remember, by the broken part of the pole.
Wow, so you guys were at the same event.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I remember that day.
when was that?
Oh, that boy, I could look it up in my records. I want to say that's probably, oh, let's see, that would have been 04, 2004, 2005, something like that.
Okay,
yeah, Dennis, you're in one of our sister clubs. We're in the northern part of California. Dennis's club, I think, was the NCWA? Or were you?
yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay. And they're in the, they're sort of more in the central northern part of California.
yes.
And the event they're talking about takes place every year down in Fresno. And it also has a couple of horse-drawn units that come to that. So
Is that green box tools for assembly and disassembly, or?
That's just the box I put on the back. I just needed something more in my flat car.
Now, Don, you mentioned something about them actually carrying tools. Would that have been like a box, or would they have been just slung on the caisson? Or
Okay, the tools are in the traveling forges limber, and they're in specific boxes. There are 7 numbered tool boxes in the between the limber and the battery wagon. Now, you guys made a battery wagon, if you remember, in the 3rd. They had that battery wagon for a while. And they had actually the individual toolboxes correctly made for that. It was a wonderful display. But they're all the tools that the artificers use in repairing the rolling stock and equipment.
Dennis, what is that white strip or that flat piece on that limber?
That's a canvas cover. It isn't a soft thing that you sit on. This is the canvas thing that they would put over in inclement weather to keep everything dry.
Got it. And there's your forge, I presume, right? Whose models are these, by the way, Dennis?
Pardon?
Whose models are these? I mean, like the manufacturer.
Yeah, these are a 1/24 scale or ½ inch to the foot. And I can't remember who I got the original cannon from, but I happened to be talking to a guy that runs the Ozark Miniatures. And I said, do you do spin casting? And could you make a mold of my cannon here and make me a whole bunch? And he said, oh, I want to do that. So he made a mold, and a good friend of mine did some original modeling and made parts for the limber and the and the caisson, and we cast those up at Ozark Miniatures too. So
he's probably still got those, right? I think Charlie and Bernie might be interested in those. That's beautiful. So you used God, you got like rope like looking things on there to tie them down. Was that actual twine?
no, that's actual. Gosh, I can't remember where I got it, but it's not twine, it's actual linen.
Okay.
I think I got them at.
And do you have any idea how these would have been loaded onto the flats?
How they would have gotten them on the flat car? What?
The livers and the caissons, how would they have planked?
I think your platform you showed or planking would be the only way you get them up there.
Yes, right. I'm modeling this as when they moved the 2 cores from Washington D.C. to Chattanooga.
All right, the 11th and 12th Corps. Yep.
Yeah, 11th Corps. So I just in my little bit of research I could do, I figured there was about 34 guns with these 2 cores, and I can't remember what book I read and how they actually moved all of this stuff from Washington D.C. down south.
Got it. Yeah.
But they were getting engines and cars from every place to to make this move, just taking them.
So when
No,
they,
no.
go ahead.
On those boxes, would that be iron or brass or on the bottom and across the lids? Would that,
They're
I-
wood.
leather or-
Wood, and that's a copper covering of a wood box.
Yes. You get no static electricity and it would all drain off. So you're
Ah.
not making any sparks for the ammunition inside.
Oh, so
So
copper
when you're-
was,
So when your wool pants are sliding across this stuff, you're not making sparks.
oh, okay, okay.
And actually the steel bolts that bolt the handles on, they have copper covers on the inside so that the ferrous metal doesn't go to the inside without copper separating it.
Got it. All right. I don't know if I have anything after this. Do I? Nope. Oh, yes, I do. Now some models. So those are, I forget the name of I have a list of all of these. You probably know some of these. Anybody know what that group is down on the lower left?
Airfix.
Yes, very good. And these you're familiar with, Italieri and IMEX. Those are seven.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, those, that's Musket Miniatures. The Confederate Artillery. I forget who those were. Damn, I didn't put the names in here. Sorry, guys. Whoops. And of course, you have Perry models as well. So if you're interested in modeling some artillery, here's some of your choices. And for N scale, what do you guys use, Mark?
GHQ. We just
Yeah.
had that discussion online in the group
Yeah.
again. And when I built the Kettle Run, I got several really nice artillery sets from GHQ. And for N scale, they've got absolutely the best detail. And I did misstate online the other day. I said they were made out of pot metal, but they're not. They're made out of pewter. They cast in pewter. But the detail is fantastic for N scale.
Right. Good.
I put the link. It's in the message that I replied. I think it was Bill Williams and someone else that I was having the discussion with there online. And I put the link for GHQ miniatures in my reply. So it's on the group's message board.
Right. I like the detail in this one in the upper left where it shows the inside of the what do you call these things?
Ammunition box.
Oh, that particularly is actually just an ammunition box.
Right. Okay. Good.
Is that 54 millimeter?
Yes, and I think these they also make they make them for S scale. I think they make N, S, H, O, and O. And I think oh yeah, that's other stuff, right? Great. Okay. Any other questions for Don or Dennis? Dennis, those are gorgeous models. Gorgeous models.
I have a question for Don.
I think, Tom, you asked the question, and I'm not sure if it was completely answered. When they were loading artillery on, did they load it from the end of the flat onto the end of the flat car, or did they load it on from the side?
I would say the side.
Okay.
I was thinking once they put them on one, Don and Dennis, would they have, like, assuming they have like a series of flat cars, would they have just put planks from car to car and just wheeled them down the flat car? I guess that's possible.
That would have been one method.
Or move the train along, I suppose would be the other.
Right. Right. Good. Wow. Any other comments, questions?
Question for Don.
Yes.
Are you still doing reenacting?
Well, yeah, as soon as the pandemic gets over, we're anxious to be starting again.
Well, I coordinate an event in southern Lancaster County. Be glad to have you. It's set for Labor Day weekend.
Yeah, well, one of our batteries actually went back to the Gettysburg event. Actually, they portrayed Confederates at that time. That's called galvanizing in our hobby. that was quite a step to get that process along. I wasn't able to go to that one, unfortunately, because I had a shoulder operation, but we would love to, but I don't know if we have anybody up to it, because that's quite a trip for us.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's at the
From
Robert
California.
Birthplace, below Quarryville.
Yeah, that's
It's weeks away.
right.
Robert Fulton Birthplace on 222 south of Quarryville.
Yeah,
Yeah, that would take you.
that's a nice setting.
That would probably take you a couple of weeks to bring all that out there.
It took basically a week each way.
Yeah. Right.
I have a question on the protocol. When you had that one that shows the map of where everybody's standing, the person who's standing in the rear, would he take care of aiming and sighting? So where the shell hit, where it needs to go, the next shot and all that? Who's in charge of that?
Normally, when you're aiming the gun, they straddle the trail and they put their head down and use the sights that are on cannons. But that could commonly be done by a corporal, and they would do that. This doesn't show it, but there's the one picture to the side. If you notice the slight pole behind it, that's called a hand spike, and that allows the person standing there to pull the trail left or right easily.
Mm-hmm.
And the elevation is done by an elevation screw, which is under the tube.
Right.
You're always going to have drops if you sight over the top. That's awfully short range. I would think if you're sighting over the barrel.
Believe it or not, a rifled gun during the Civil War, a good gunner could hit a barn door 1 mile away on the first round. On a smoothbore gun, you could hit the barn 1 mile away on your first round.
Let me relate an anecdote about the realism and the authenticity that Don and his group portray and bring to our reenactments. We usually have something called, in normal years, we had a tactical every year before the season started. And the reenactors would gather at somebody's ranch out in the wilds, and we'd do a little bit of practice. And Don, of course, would always train everybody, the infantry included, in safety practice around the cannons, because they're using not shells, but they're using real powder. Don's guns use about 1 pound of powder in the Napoleon, and about 10 ounces in the 3-inch.
1.5 pounds and 6 ounces in the small gun.
There you go. So that's a lot of black powder. And I can attest, when you're laying dead about 75 feet outside the safety range of the Napoleon and it goes off, I've actually felt like it's lifted me off the ground. And what Don would do at these tacticals is they'd set up one of the cannons. I think it was the 3-inch ordnance rifle. And at this one place we had, there was a fence post on a hill, and it was just about a half a mile away. And it took them 2 shots and they took it out, took the fence post out.
The common thing that an artillery group tried to do was they tried to cripple the other cannon crew. They did that 2 different ways. One of the common ways was they'd shoot all the horses, because once the horses are gone, you can't pull it very far. The other method was they would try to hit the limber, which would cause an explosion. But the most sporting method was they tried to hit the muzzle of another cannon. There are 2 cannons in museums in the United States where they have hits from a cannon on the end of the muzzle. That's what they shot for.
Okay. Anything else for Don or Dennis? Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for your time and your presentation.
Thank you.
Yep. It's
Thanks
funny.
for the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny, every time I do a Zoom, whatever the topic is, the next day I'm working with whatever the heck we just talked about. So consequently, I don't get very far with the other projects I've got going. Crazy.
That's a pretty common affliction.
Yep. Yep. So like I say, I think on June 3rd, we're going to have George showing us, I think he's going to be ready to show us the work he's done with the, yes, that's a thumbs up from George. Cool. Yeah, DC said he saw, oh my God, look at that. Oh my God. Now, if you want to
George, say something so we can get a close up. You're on mute, George.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm here. Sorry. So here I'll show you a little bit about where it's at.
If you guys hang on 1 second, if you click speaker view on the option up there, it'll just show George as he's talking. That's HO?
That is HO. And many hours, and I've actually lost a few hairs over it. But yeah, I got it done. So it showed off in Cheyenne this last weekend at the show, and got a lot of great responses, and a handful of people were interested in talking about Civil War modeling, and so I invited them to the group. I don't know, I don't think anybody participated yet today, but told them about it. So
that's great. Thank you, George.
But I have two other things for you guys real quick, kind of in regards to this. Number one is, it's not on this model, but I had a friend of mine 3D print some of the builder's plates. So they're 3D printed, and I left them upstairs. They're on the kitchen table, but we were talking about opening up and trying to sell them. If anybody's interested in them, I'll see if I can dig a picture up and post them, or I'll have them ready for next presentation when I do this one. And the other thing I found at the show this weekend, partially because this was here, somebody came over and said, "Hey, I've got this. Anybody interested in buying this?"
Oh, right. I think
this will line to Bernie.
We were just talking about this not too long ago, and so it's a complete kit. I didn't pay much for it, so $20 and shipping to get it if anybody's interested. So yeah, otherwise I figure I'll use it for something.
It's 1/48 scale.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay. So
but it's a cool model.
Oh yeah, no, it would look pretty cool to build. I just had no idea what scale it was, but I hadn't put that much energy into it either. I was like, well, okay, I'll pay $20 for that.
Yeah.
I figured somebody here might be interested in using it. So.
Well, you can always post it in an email and see if you get any bites on that. I think Bernie shared that with us on a previous meet as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll post that, and then I'll get some pictures of these builders plates and see if anybody's interested in getting some of those too. Because I know since Al passed away, his brass ones or whatever he had, I don't know if anybody has any of those anymore, but this will, these have the 3D printed ones. And so we can at least have some graphic relief versions of it. And one of the things I was going to ask him is to make them a little thinner, but I haven't talked to him much since I got this one done because I've been busy. We're back at the office now, which is part of the reason I was running a little bit behind. So I was running home trying to hurry up and get here so I can participate.
No,
that's a great model, George.
Is there any chance of getting copies of the FTP files so that we can blow them up into O scale?
I'll have to ask the guy. I didn't draw them. So I was actually doing it through a friend who has that. So I'll have to ask him.
Maybe you could get a couple other builders into the mix too. Maybe have them do them all on one tree.
Mm.
Now, do these need decals? No.
Well, they're just 3D printed, so they're just flat faced, but where the openings of the builder's plates are, they're kind of open. So they would need decals of some form, and that was one of the things I was going to see. In all honesty, John, I'd sent him some of your photographs to use as a guide to draw them, or some of your drawings anyway that you have on your website, and sent him some of those to use as a guide. So if we probably scale them properly, we might even be able to just print the decal off of there and apply it.
Oh, yeah, we can repurpose any of that artwork.
Okay, so I'll touch base with him. I'll try to get in touch with him before we do the presentation and have some definitive answers for you guys.
Great,
Cool deal.
great. Let's see. Anything else? Anything else anybody want to ask about or share?
Yeah, Tom, where did you get the illustrations of the train loads that you showed earlier? Those profile views.
Wow, I don't remember.
I think they may be in a file on our site.
Yeah, I know they're there. Do you want a copy? I could just take what I got and send it over to you.
God, I'd love that.
Yeah,
I'd love that.
Yep.
Thank you, Tom.
Yep.
Is anybody interested in seeing a picture of one of those four-wheel flat cars?
Yes, sir.
Sure.
Okay, hang on just a second here.
Did you have a question, John Bob?
Well, I have something. Let's look at the four-wheel flat
Okay.
car. Then I got a question for George.
Oh, wow.
Everybody see that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Real simple. Didn't even have truss rods, doesn't look like.
Holy mackerel. Now I got to model some of those. That's very cool. I love it. And you said they were predominantly in the South?
Well, the South would have had a lot of them because the South had a lot of antiquated equipment for 1860.
Wow. I love it. Okay.
Do you know where this photo is from, where it was taken?
Let's see, the Knox and Lincoln Railroad,
Okay.
which I think,
It's
I
interesting.
think that's a Northern Railroad, but same idea.
It's interesting because the track that the flat car's on is covered with weeds, and the turnout next to it looks like it's brand spanking new.
Well, that's most likely the case. This was probably, the photos probably was taken in the late 1800s.
Uh-huh.
For the simple reason that cameras weren't that common back in Civil War days. So, this would have been an old survivor.
Right. Maintenance of way type car by
Right.
that stage.
Anyway,
Can you blow it up bigger again?
hang on. I'm not sure whether I'm doing this correctly. Now, that's about as big as it gets, I'm afraid.
Mm-hmm.
Just went smaller.
Sometimes if you right click it, it'll give you an option to zoom.
Let me see here. No, as long as I'm in share, I can't do a right click, unfortunately. Tom, hang on.
Okay.
I'm looking at options and I can't find it. What I'll do is I'll just, I'll send out an email. I'll post it in email for everybody.
Got it.
It looks like it's got brakes on the outside of both sets of wheels.
Yeah, most likely it would have.
I see the beam there in the front
Right.
Yeah.
You see the beam in the front and you can see the,
and the wheels in back.
yeah, right. And then there's the shaft on the far end.
Yep.
Look how small that link looks coming out of that draw head.
Yep.
Wow.
8 pocket.
No wonder people lost a lot of fingers.
Is that a ruined wall on the left-hand side?
A ruined wall?
Right, yeah, just above that.
Yeah, it could be.
Mm.
Could very well be. I don't know. I'm going to have to find out where the Knox and Lincoln Railroad was. It's not something that comes to mind.
Right.
Anyway, I thought you guys might be interested.
Thank you, John. Yep.
It's interesting, the ties on that more derelict track, they look more rounded than the ones on the brand new track in front.
Right. Okay, John, Bob, you have something you'd like to share with us?
I have a question for George.
Okay.
Still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
I don't know if anybody has seen this, but in this month's Model Railroad Hobbyist, George has an article on weighting cars with low melting point alloys, including, to my surprise, plastic cars. So I wonder if you'd say anything more about that.
I'd actually talked about doing it for this group, but it's a metal called Cerobend, and it melts at 158 degrees. So you can take I used a soldering iron as scrap, an extra one, not my electronic one, but you can just hit the metal and it'll turn liquid and drip into your plastic car. And because it's only 158 degrees, it doesn't warp, distort, or change anything on the car itself. And then there's another one. I was going to say there's another one that's called Cerra Low, and that's CERRA, Bend and LOW. And that one melts at 117. But my caution there is that if you use the Cerra Low and you travel and you take your cars and your models in your car and leave it in the sun for a little bit, you might end up with a whole pool of metal in the bottom of your boxes. So the 158 is probably adequate, and it's much cheaper too.
So you're dripping it off of the block that it comes in into the model, and then the drips fuse with what's already there, so it makes one chunk?
Yes.
And have you ever tried it with something that's not one piece, but maybe where there's a glue joint? Does it have any effect on something that's glued?
I haven't really played with it much, to be honest with you, but this is the car that was in the video, and this is just a standard hopper. But if you look at the underside in between the bays, here is where I filled in on the video, and then just painted it over. So once that's weathered, you'll never see it.
Right.
And then here's where I poured it into the inside of the coal load. So it just sits in there. And this one adds quite a bit. I mean, it's pretty heavy, and this is about as low as I can get in this particular load. So when I put it in the car, the center of gravity is as low as it can get. But in this particular case, I wanted to be able to leave the car open on the inside. So I added a little bit. And this didn't add a whole lot to the bottom, but it adds a little bit, and every little bit helps when it comes to tracking.
Right.
So as far as glue joints, that's really about it. I would imagine some of these parts are glued together in here that it filled, because when you're looking at it, when it's sitting on the track, you'll never even see that.
Right.
Right.
So it's something that I haven't really played much with. I honestly did the video, and then I focused on getting the general done so that I could show it off. And then so now as I get back into some of the freight car projects and other stuff, I'll start getting using more of that Cerobend. But I found it for about, I think it was about $10 or $15 for a quarter-pound stick.
Right. Yeah, putting weight in box cars or something's easy, but an open car, where I wonder how it would go with a wooden car, laser cut or traditional wooden car, if you dropped it in between the frame rails from the bottom. I wonder how the car would stand up to that. Have you ever tried that?
I have not yet. I don't imagine it would, because plastic, from what I understand, it would be a little bit more of a fragile material to work with hot elements. The wood, you may see some slight elements or residue of like some slight burning, but 158 really isn't that hot.
Right, for wood.
Yeah. I tried using some of that years and years ago in a brass locomotive, and I didn't drip it in a drip at a time. I tried heating up a little something and pouring it in, and the stuff was so liquid that it found little cracks and ran out. So
It will do
a
that.
real mess.
It will do that because the front steam dome on this guy here, there's the whistle in it. Well, these are cow scale domes. Well, these two anyway. And when I drilled the hole for the whistle, I started to fill the dome with the Sarabend, and it did exactly what you're saying. It just poured out the top. So I had to, oh yeah, how about that? So
Get the file out.
you are correct. It is possible to have that happen because it is such
okay.
a low melting temperature and it is
Okay.
liquid. It just flows.
Well, after looking at your article, I got this, I don't know what you'd call it, ingot of Sarabend sitting around, and I didn't know which version I had, but when I looked at it, it said right on there, it was 158. But I've got another little piece here. This is also Saro. This is something called Saro Safe.
Oh.
And I remember back in the day, there was Sarabend and Saro Safe, but there's no melting point on this, so I don't know what it is. And then there's also stuff called bare metal. You ever heard of that or used it?
I've not heard of that.
BEAR. It was sold by Hobbytown of Boston prior to their last ownership change. It's another low temperature alloy. But seeing what you did gives me some confidence that I could give this a try.
I had it was a friend / installer of ours that showed it to me. And so I actually asked him, well, wait a minute, this is kind of cool. And I can see a lot of opportunity to use in our models, because I know A-Line, for example, has that moldable lead.
Right.
And that may not be easy to fit, especially if you're trying to tuck it and push it and mold it in. It could potentially damage detail parts. Whereas
Right.
this, because it's a low temperature, it just flows and it'll fill around the detail parts or in between them. So I asked him, I said, can I show this, or is this like a trademark of yours? He goes, no, go ahead. So I shared it with his blessing, and that was the first time I'd heard of it. And it was about I think 2 or 3 months ago. And like I said, I'd mentioned about doing it for the, kind of showing it off and actually having the materials here and saying, okay, here's how you use it. But I know Tom's got a lot of other speakers talking or scheduled, so I didn't really push the issue all that much.
Oh, we'll
John?
get you in.
Oops. Safe, I did a quick wiki of it, melting point of 165.
So pretty similar to a little higher than Sarabend.
And apparently there's a little cadmium in there. So typical warnings that go with cadmium.
Right. Yeah, I remember some of these alloys were
What's up with cadmium?
problematic.
What's the issue with cadmium?
I think if I remember right, it can be highly noxious if you're breathing fumes.
Okay.
Derived from it. It's been many years since I was a live steamer, but that was always a kind of a flashpoint metal that people talked about.
Yeah, neurological syndromes. You can
Right.
get too much of it.
I don't need any more of that.
We're so old, nobody can tell.
That's good. Good. All right. So, so we'll have George on June 3rd. And then for July and August, we're going to go to one meet a month. So it seems like there's enough interest here and people are around. So we'll do 2 of the regular meets in June, and we'll do 2 of the introductory or undergrad meets in June. And then July, we'll just go to 1 each, because I'm sure a lot of us are going to be quite busy. I'll be away for almost a month and what have you. But here's the deal. If you all want to get together, you just let me know. And, like Roger, anybody can host this. So if there's, something you want to do with some members and you want some tips on how to set it up, just let me know, or let Roger know you want to do this and we can coordinate it for you. Good. Okay. Anything else? All right, gentlemen, as always.
What dates are you
let-
thinking about in October?
We Baltimore. I mean, and Dan said he's got some connections with the steamers there.
Great.
Yeah.
You
So
said something in your email about potential date.
yeah, the first weekend of October.
Okay, that's what I thought. All right.
And you know, as you all look at that date, I'm thinking the only one that might have a conflict might be Bernie with another convention someplace. But yeah, so we'll go there this time, and then what's that?
I won't be able to make it. I have an event that weekend.
Okay.
First weekend of October conflicts with the Albuquerque Balloon Fiesta.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I'm sure there's going to be some conflicts for some folks. And then maybe next year we'll go back to Memphis and
Kansas
run
City.
the Macon and the Memphis and Charleston Railroad.
Kansas City.
Glorious Pass.
Yeah.
DC, hey DC, you just trying to get some barbecue? Is that what this is all about?
No, that's where Don Ball's layout is.
Oh yeah, that's true.
For that.
And
That would be a heck of an op session.
Yeah.
There's the Gettysburg of the West, so there's Civil War stuff in the area too.
Right.
Some museums and stuff.
Yep. And I decided that, you know, there's nothing Civil War anything practically out here in the Long Branch area. So I'm just going to do a meet like in the winter or, you know, like late winter and invite you guys, you know, whoever wants to come on out. We'll spend a few days just running trains up here.
That sounds like a good idea.
Yeah, this New Yorker says okay.
Yeah. Good.
I'll also add in, just as a FYI, at this moment in time, I'm planning to be at the Baltimore RPM, which is called the Mid-Atlantic RPM, Railroad Prototype Modelers. And I think that's September 10 and 11 at the Baltimore airport. So if you guys are not far away, maybe, you know, put that on the radar as well.
I might be, I think Bernie is, but I might be doing a clinic there as well on.
I'm scheduled to do one.
Are you? What are you doing?
Probably just an overview of Tsunami 2, because I mean, I'm going to sell, so I kind of have to do that, but I get to bring my own personal models and enjoy the RPM meets as myself. So that's, like I said, I'm currently scheduled. I'm really going to start nailing down the travel and itinerary and stuff like that coming up here probably in July.
Good.
Can you keep us posted and give us some more details as things progress with you?
Sure.
So more about the event.
Yeah, I mean, it's a railroad prototype meet. I always enjoy them. They're some of the best in my opinion, because you see a lot of the really serious, good models out there, and it brings everybody. But for us, because it's very railroad focused, it's not like a typical, like a World's Greatest Hobby or something that is really focused on the hobby in general. Our products being very focused for, you know, more of the operator slash modeler as opposed to the casual train set runner. They do really well for us. And so I'm always happy to do the RPM. So I know this summer I'm doing a Red River RPM, which is down in Fort Worth, Texas, June 26th. That's a one-day Saturday show. And then after that, there's a open house at Spring Creek Model Trains, July 24th, I think it is, 25th, somewhere around there. And then following that weekend is the St. Louis RPM, and that's apparently going to be huge. They've had a lot of response and requests, because I think that's right around that everybody's, you know, being able to get out and do more. And then I'm actually looking at passing through the Kansas City area to St. Louis on that trek. And then from St. Louis, I maybe go visit my brother in Knoxville and head home after that, after a few days. And then that Mid-Atlantic RPM's the next one after that. So that's kind of what I'm looking at.
Right.
A lot of travel. Yep. So looking forward to getting back out, because I'm tired of being at the house.
I hear you. I hear you. Good. All right. Okay, gentlemen. Well, once again, great to see you all. And Thanks again to Don and Dennis for joining us and sharing your insights and your experience. And yeah, well done. And so we'll see you all next time, which will be, I don't know when, whenever 2 weeks from today is.
Wasn't it June 3rd?
It is June 3rd in 2 weeks. Okay, good. And that's when we got you on deck. Cool. Love it. All right, guys, stay well. Happy railroading. Make something.
All right. Thanks, Sam.
Bye, guys.
Thanks all.
Good night.
Night, you guys.